Well, good morning and welcome to this video from Yoker Evangelical Church. It's Tuesday the 26th of May, and this morning in our Bible reading plan we read Numbers chapter 35 and Psalm 79. And this morning I'd like to just take a look at Numbers 35. As we reach the end of the book of Numbers, we're starting to see the people on the shores of the promised land, the land that was promised to Abraham all the way back in Genesis, and that the people have been heading to since Exodus. They're now on the boundary of it. We see that repeated again and again through these chapters. And here in verse 1, where he says, "On the plains of Moab by the Jordan opposite Jericho, the Lord said to Moses." The picture is that all the people have finished the end of their journey, and they're now sitting on the banks of the river looking over at the land that is going to be theirs. It's as if they are sitting in Renfrew looking over the Clyde and seeing the promised land. And as we see this, it's helpful to remember that the people that we're looking at are meant to help us understand our position. Just like Christians today, these are people that have been saved by God and have now been called to live for Him. And as they prepare to enter the promised land, God gives Moses a whole load of instructions for them to help them understand how they're going to live when they come into this inheritance. And in this chapter, we heard all about the towns of refuge. Now, these can seem a wee bit confusing, but as we read through the chapter, we saw it's really simple that if somebody kills somebody by accident, the law would demand that they were killed, but they can go to these towns of refuge to ensure that they have a fair trial. As we see again and again, the laws about murder remind us that guilt demands blood and that God's laws matter. By seeing how much time is spent explaining what will happen, we are reminded again and again of these two important facts: that guilt demands blood to be spilled, and that God's laws really do matter. And on one level, I found this chapter really encouraging because it reminds us that God knows our sinful weakness. As the people enter the promised land, God is under no illusion that these are perfect people who are going to obey His laws. He knows that they're sinners. He knows that they are going to mess up. And so He gives them these laws as a provision for when they do sin. It's God's grace that He gives them these laws at all. And just like that, God knows that we are sinful. It is also a reminder that sin demands death. I was struck just reading this chapter how it specifies that you cannot buy your way out of the punishment. That if a murderer comes to one of these towns of refuge, no matter what ransom he can put up himself, there is no escaping the punishment for what he has done. And that is a sobering reminder when we remember that each one of us stands accused and guilty in God's eyes. By the standards of God's law, each of us would be one of these people that needs to seek refuge because each of us has broken God's laws. How wonderful it is, though, that we have one who took that punishment for us. That Jesus, that the very one who was due our blood for the sins that we did against Him, actually at the cross He takes that punishment on Himself. This chapter reminds us of the serious penalty that sin faces, and that causes us to praise God as we remember that Jesus is the one that took it all. God's grace is shown to us as we remember the one who took that penalty on our behalf. I hope this has been helpful this morning and that you have a good day. God bless.